Good evening. Good evening and welcome to Starfest Presents Will Ferguson. I am Michelle Steinhusen, the festival director, and I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're very privileged to share these amazing authors and stories from the St. Albert Public Library, which sits in Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis people. We're actually going to do something a little different to start the evening. I'm going to start with someone currently very far away from Treaty 6. Our poet laureates, Julia Sorensen, performed a poem at last year's Starfest. When we asked if she would do it again this year, she chose Will Ferguson's book, The Finder, as her inspiration. Julia is St. Albert's second poet laureate and a published writer, musician, and visual artist. She's performed spoken word and music at Edmonton Poetry Festival, Skirts of Fire, Seven Music Festival, Berlin Spoken Word, St. Albert Mayor's Celebration of the Arts and Amplify Festival. She's currently completing her master's degree in Arts, Festival, and Cultural Management at Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh, Scotland. Because of the time difference, we got Julia to pre-record her poem, and I will get Julia to start us off.
Hello everybody, my name is Julia Swenson. I am St. Albert's Poet Laureate. I have read The Finder and have written a poem inspired by it. The book was really, really delightful to read. I liked it at the beginning and it grew on me as well. So this has been a real pleasure to work through and to produce this poem. I was inspired by the book, in the book's contents as well as the language, because I am currently in Edinburgh in Scotland, doing my master's, and so the travel writing elements and the finding home in multiple places elements, or problematizing what home was a really interesting element of the book that spoke to me. So I ended up writing a poem that is more of a personal interpretation that borrows some of my favorite lines from the book, and it does have a bit of a focus on Scotland. I quite liked that the last scene in the book, or one of the last scenes, is in Luss, which is by Loch Lomond, because I was there this summer, and hearing the history of that place a little bit differently through the book was really really interesting. The poem is called Shed. A prodigal snake returns to her husband in the long grass. She's shed many skins since she left, cells of herself in cracked city cement amid rocks on rolling hills. She wants to tell him about them, so she starts. I've seen you as a Spanish boy, arms held out in the place between embrace and surrender. I've seen you as an old woman, crying, blowing out candles at the end of the night. You were on a comet streaking through sky, a drop of water cascading down the fairy pools, 1,000 small omens. You were everywhere, reminding me of everywhere else. Her husband sees her seeing her home, simultaneously familiar and strange. He was drinking in her stories as much as her scent, her face, the slit of her tongue as she told them. He wants to tell her he's crossed worlds moving through the same 3 places, that he misses a version of her who's dead, or just been shed, inhabiting memory, squashing the seat of the living. So he starts. I've seen you in those 2 new skyscrapers, the ones you can watch while you wait for the train to reverse over the tracks. You were in the crumb the dog adhered to her tongue under the table last night, the childhood home of my generations. And then the husband paused, realized. You're in your left behind toothbrushes, stars so bright they cast shadows. You're in them and the voices that sing the same tones as yours, in the pebbled snow on that road leading us somewhere else for the weekend. As they spoke, the snake wife slithered in circles, flattening the blades of the long grass. Through the silence, she said, I'm bearing my soul to you. Tell me that you'll still bear it. He considered again, saw her in lush fleur-de-lis, shells like priceless porcelain crunching underfoot on Hebridean beaches, sideways blown rain, red hills in West Lothian, those shale oil attempts at reproducing Uluru. Stories sculpted into the earth. He said, your name means wave, so I'll miss you when you go out, but I'll welcome you back in, whatever the skin. And then he was crying and lighting a candle, and he didn't know why or for whom. This was all he'd been searching for. Yeah, thank you very much. Also, thank you to Will Ferguson for allowing me to borrow those lines, or potentially I'm asking for forgiveness rather than permission right now. I will credit you. I've credited you. Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity. I hope that the event goes very well, and I also hope that I will be able to watch it tomorrow, if it is being streamed afterwards. Yeah, enjoy.
I'm going to say a long distance thank you to, am I still, to Julia. It's actually 2 o'clock in the morning in Scotland. She originally was thinking that maybe she would do that live, but this was really a great way to start. So we do have Will Ferguson tonight. He is a Starfest frequent flyer. He joined us at the very first Starfest in 2011 and then again in 2013. And we brought in another Starfest alumni to talk with Will tonight. Thomas Troffelmuck did not send me an updated biography this year, so I took this from his website. I don't know how current it is, but if it's not, that's his own fault. Thomas Troffelmuck is an Edmonton writer who doesn't come lightly to the blank page. He has 3 books out in the world: the 52nd poem, Doubting Yourself to the Bone, and Waiting for Columbus, and a 4th novel, This Is All a Lie, that was published in 2017. He's a longtime teacher at Youth Right and a world famous spasmodic dancer who very likely trained with the Bolshoi Ballet Company. So that is our interviewer for tonight. I'm going to bring Will and Thomas here. I wanted to let you know it is a virtual event, but we do want this to be interactive. There's going to be opportunity to ask questions, get your questions answered. So make sure you change your chat settings to say everyone instead of just hosts and panelists. And please post your questions and comments throughout the evening, and we will get those answered. And if you haven't had a chance to purchase Will's newest book, The Finder, we will put links in the chat to Audrey's Books and Glass Bookshop so that you can get the book from your local independent bookstore. So I'm going to hand things over to Will and Thomas, hopefully. Okay, here we go. There's Will. Hi, Will. Hi, Thomas. And I'm going to hide my face and listen, and I will very likely be chuckling away back here, but you won't hear me. So there you go.
Two things come to mind. I'm really happy you're not going to ask me to prove that I trained at the Bolshoi. And thank you for that poem. That poem was amazing, and you'll be hearing from Will's lawyers. Those are my two starting jokes. And now I'm going to do a long. Speaking of bios on websites, you should always be careful about what you put on there. So I'm going to do a rather not too lengthy, but a thorough introduction of Will, and then I'll start off with the humdinger of a question, and we'll just take it from there. Does that sound good? There's 47 of us, and I'll remind you right now, just feel free to drop a question in there, and at some point in our conversation, we'd love to pick that question up and address it. Okay. Will Ferguson is an award-winning travel writer and novelist. He was born and raised in the teeming metropolis of Fort Vermilion. At the time this bio was written, it says the population was 728, which is, that's pretty small. His debut novel, Happiness, sold into 23 languages around the world. His novel 419 won the Scotiabank Giller Prize. His new novel, The Finder, already won an award. Won the 2021 Arthur Ellis Award for Crime Fiction. He has won the Stephen Leacock Medal of Humor, not once, not twice, yes, 3 times. And he has been nominated for both the I Am Pack Dublin Literary Award and the Commonwealth Writers' Prize. In his early 20s, he lived and worked in Ecuador, South America, and as part of Canada World Youth. He studied film production and screenwriting at York University, graduating with a BFA in 1990. He joined the Japan Exchange Teachers Program after university and spent 5 years in Asia, traveling through China, Korea, Indonesia, and Malaysia. He found, I guess, and married his wife in Japan, and they now live in Calgary with their 2 sons. He has written 4 travel memoirs with titles such as Hitching Rides with Buddha and Beauty Tips from Moose Jaw, which is one of my faves. In 2010, he was the head writer for the Vancouver Winter Olympics closing ceremonies, penning material for the wild, in real life spaceman William Shatner and Michael J. Fox. He has written for the New York Times, Esquire, UK, Flair, Zoomer, the Globe and Mail, the National Post, and Canadian Geographic. And he sits on the board of the Chakras Foundation. And in 2016, received an honorary degree in English from Mount Royal University. Wow. I'm like, that is
No wonder I'm so tired. No wonder I'm tired all the time.
Exhausted. Oh my God, you must be exhausted. I'm going to start with, I love going to publishers' websites and finding out, looking at what the publishers said about the Finder. And so I thought I'd give there's about 46, almost 50 of us listening. And so maybe not all of them have read the book. So I'm going to just give you what the publisher said, if that's okay. The Finder. The world is filled with wonders, lost objects, all real, all still out there waiting to be found. The missing Fabergé eggs of the Romanov dynasty. The last reel of Alfred Hitchcock's first film. Buddy Holly's iconic glasses. Muhammad Ali's Olympic gold medal. How can such cherished objects simply vanish? Where are they hiding, and who on earth might be compelled to uncover them? Will Ferguson takes readers on a heroic, imaginative journey across continents, from the seas of South Japan to arid Australia outback to the city of Christchurch, New Zealand after the earthquake. Prepare to meet some really fascinating characters. Gaddy Rhodes, who's a brittle, I thought geeky, obsessed Interpol agent, and she is on the hunt for the Finder, who is a shadowy figure she believes is collecting lost objects. Thomas Rafferty, pretty burnt out travel writer who crosses paths with the Finder, and Tasman Green, a swaggering war photographer who has some decent secrets of her own. The Finder is a beguiling and wildly original tale about the people, places, and things that are lost and found in our world. Both an epic literary adventure and an escape into a darkly thrilling world of deceit and its rewards. This novel asks, how far would you be willing to go to recover things you left behind? A couple of things that have been said about the Finder is that it's pacey. I always wanted to write a book that someone said, wow, that's really, that book was pacey. Pacey, globe-trotting tale of duplicity and misdirection. A plucky and seductive adventure novel, part thriller, part travelogue. I am so pleased to be talking with Will Ferguson tonight. Hello, finally, hello.
Hi, Thomas. Plucky and seductive. I think that they were talking more about me.
Well,
the book itself.
that very well could be. That very well.
Thank you. Before we get to that humdinger of a question, I just wanted to thank Julia. What a wonderful poem. That was beautiful. It was absolutely wonderful. So thank you to St. Albert's Poet Laureate. And it especially resonates because the last trip I took as a travel writer pre-pandemic was to Scotland. In 2019, I went to Isle of Arran and Luss on Loch Lomond for Zoomer magazine, which Rafferty also writes for. And I went on a whiskey tour. Then that was my last trip before everything shut down. I haven't been out of Canada since. So, wow. So thanks again to Julia. I thought that was a beautiful poem.
I concur. So let's talk about this book. The novel leans hard towards thriller and eventually falls into something of a literary, what I like to think of as a story puzzle. And I'm particularly fond of literary story puzzles. And I found that The Finder was a beautiful magic trick. This is the kind of book, I think, that once you've gotten to the end, I immediately wanted to reread it. And I think I will in the coming weeks. And it's not because I was dissatisfied. We can talk about endings later, but rather, I recognize that it can be read, while it can be read as a thriller, it's way more complicated than that. There are currents of meaning that are hidden, like Alfred Hitchcock movie titles and other nuggets that you may have missed as you were engrossed in the story. Now, the blurb from the publisher talked about physical objects, and of course the book focuses on the physical objects, but there's more missing than just the physical objects in this book. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yes, and thank you for the introduction, Thomas. But the characters are lost. These are lost characters. They're lost and trying to grope their way back to something, to who they were or who they thought they should be, who they thought they might have been. So I say it's a book of MacGuffins in a sense, but beneath that, it's really a collection of lost souls, really trying to find their way through this. But at the same time, those all are real objects. Like I didn't want to invent. There's so many real objects that are lost. I didn't need to invent any. And I know authors like to say that we like to act as though ideas come from very mysterious, dark, layered places. But in this case, honestly, I was in the tub reading a Mental Floss magazine. It's this trivia magazine, and it was an article said 10 objects you should be looking for. It had all these 10 lost objects, Muhammad Ali's gold medal, the first teddy bear, all these things that were out there. And I remember thinking, what would happen if somebody tried to find not one of them, but all of them? And at the same time, I was mulling over an idea about a travel writer who was a torqued version of myself. So I had two ideas, and I went, wait a minute, let's mush them together and see what happens.
Okay, so one of the lines that I outlined that we might talk about later, but now maybe we won't, has to do with I can't remember who said it, but somebody says something along the lines of all stories begin with the two words "what if," and so you've just given us the "what if" for this novel, which is fantastic. I like stories like, what if this happened? Like that's, some people start, you can start novels from different angles, from a character, from someone you know, or a theme. But for me, they always begin with, what if this happened? What would happen next? Right. And I should point out, Thomas, that you're a master trickster as well. Your last novel, and if people haven't read it, they really have to. It's all of this is a lie, and the book is, I've always thought that fiction is a kind of in one way it's a magic trick, except that the reader's taking part in it. So it's like a game. I used to think of it as a trick, but I think it's almost a game, like a shell game between the writer and the reader. Mm-hmm. And in your novel, the novel's told backwards, from acknowledgements, the note on the font, but of course it really isn't. It really isn't, because the woman, I don't want to give anything away, but the woman on the balcony, you don't start with what happened to her. Like, you don't start with that. And I want to be careful. There's nothing worse than someone spoiling it. But so I have a question for you is, oh my God. Because
first of all, it's a brilliant book. Waiting for Columbus too, Thomas, your earlier book, loved that, absolutely loved it. But All of This Is a Lie is it's like a master class in trickster storytelling, but it's got a very powerful story running through it. I don't want to make it sound, it's not like a game, like the story itself there's a lot of heart to it, but the story itself, as I mentioned, here's my question.
Okay.
The page numbers are backwards in that novel.
Yeah.
So it starts at the last page and counts down. In an earlier novel of mine, a character is a copy editor. She's working as a copy editor. And she says at one point, this is a game you play with readers, she says, the most important things are never in an index. It's always like graduation, date of birth, spouse, children, if any. It's never hope, despair. It's never memory, something. It's not the really important things that matter. Those aren't in an index. So at the end of the novel, there's an index written by her.
Mm-hmm.
So, it tells, hope, mystery, stuff from the novel, themes from the novel. And I asked my publisher, can those page numbers in that index match the page numbers in the novel? And they said, no. They wouldn't let me do it. They said, no, the hassle. So and I should explain to people watching, indexes are a lot of work, and they're usually reserved for very hard, not hard, but nonfiction, like really kind of classic nonfiction research books. So memoir, even though it's nonfiction, wouldn't have an index, and novels never have indexes, right? But so I wanted my novel to have an index. They wouldn't even let me put the page numbers in. How on earth did you convince your publisher to let you reverse the page numbers counting down? And how hard was it to do?
Listen, it wasn't too hard for me to do it.
For someone to do. In
the draft, I used Google. I went online and I said, okay, there's got to be a code for this where I can get the page numbers to run backwards. And sure enough, I found the code and I thought, okay, I'm so out of my comfort zone right now, but I did it and it worked. And I thought, okay, this is fine. So I sent it in. We worked on the book. We worked on the book. I don't know, 2 weeks before printing, I get a call from the publisher, and he's standing with the designer, and he says, yeah, how important is it that these pages, and I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like I mention it in the book. Yeah, it's really important, really important. And so I offered to give him the code, and I sent him the code that I used. And what I think happened is they did it by hand. They did each page by hand. Yeah.
So they had to go through physically. But you're right, you can't, at that point you can't. The whole book is set up as this reverse tale, told in reverse. So it's pretty hard to. Yeah. I've done with my very first novel, Happiness, on a much smaller scale than that, of course. So that's why I'm very impressed that you got the publisher to do that. I'm very impressed that your publisher didn't, hire a hitman to hunt you down.
I did send him a bottle of scotch. So
okay, so that's the key. See, that's the key. Is I was too cheap. I didn't send him anything. I should have applied them with scotch. But with my first novel, Happiness, it was set in publishing, and I know I'm supposed to. I'll stick to Finder, but my very first book had a game in it as well. And it's set in the world of publishing. It's about a self-help book that works and then just ruins the world because everybody's happy. And the publisher is this horrible publisher, the guy, and he's a just marketing guru type of publisher. And at one point he tells his editors that he ran a survey of the average number of pages in a bestseller. And it's 362 or whatever. So make sure that your book is that number of pages, because that's the average number. So I said to my publisher, wouldn't it be funny if Happiness had whatever page number he says? And it took a lot of doing, but they agreed to do it. So we altered the page number for the hardcover, but then when it went to paperback, they had to go back, and then there was a pocket version, so they had to keep changing that one. So when Mr. Mead in the novel says the average length of a bestseller is 294 pages, if you flip to the back, Happiness is 294 pages. So I thought it was worth the joke, but then they started selling translations.
Oh no.
So every publisher, and they were getting so mad. I had a similar conversation. How important is this? I said, well, And then one publisher, I think it was Spanish publisher, talked me around and said, well, here's the joke though. People look and your book isn't that page number. It's a meta joke on a meta joke. So in the end, I gave up. So it doesn't apply to the foreign language ones, but to the English ones, if you flip to the back, that whatever page number he gives is the page number.
Oh my God, I'm going to.
So again, hats off to you, Thomas, to get
Thank
the
you so
entire
much.
book repaginated. I don't think if people watching realize what a feat that is for an author to move a publisher in when it comes to the production side, not the content. Of course, authors have veto, but on the production side of it, they're very, they guard it very jealously.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. It worked. Let's come back to the thriller or to the Finder. I do want to just talk a little bit more about some of the gems that you've hidden in this book. And you challenge, I know you challenge at the very end of the book, you challenge the reader to actually find the one that's actually been found. Now, I know the answer to this already because I actually went and did it. But I'm not going to give the answer up. But talk a little bit about that. And I'm curious about when that happened. When is it that you decided what nugget's going to be in there? Is it plotted right from the beginning, or is it something that comes in a revision or rewriting?
Well, honestly, I bought all these, any book I could find, and they're fun to read, like Lost Objects, 100 Things That You'll Never Find, Treasures That Have Never Been Discovered. So I just read voraciously one summer, and the challenge was to narrow it down. It wasn't to find objects. There were so many. So early on, I thought, okay, this is too many. I can't have 200 lost objects. So I thought, okay, you want variety, and you want, other than the Fabergé eggs, which kind of funds the guy's fortune. So that I should explain to people watching, the Finder he's this dark figure. He's kind of this amoral figure who finds objects, and he has access to a lot of wealth. So it allows him to do things that are inefficient. For example, we know where Muhammad Ali's gold medal is. We know where it is, but no one's going to get it. It's on the bottom of the Ohio River in about a foot of mud somewhere along the river, because he threw it into the river. He got angry, threw his medal in. So you need to be able to dredge that, and no one, even if you find it, it's not going to be worth it. So other than the Fabergé eggs at the very beginning, of which kind of gives the Finder this bank to draw on, I decided early on it was so overwhelming that he wouldn't be looking for treasure, like actual things that are valuable on their own. So everything he finds are valuable because they were lost. So Buddy Holly's glasses, they're just a pair of glasses. They're not made of gold. They're not gold glasses. They're not diamond. It's not a code to something. So early on, I decided, okay, let me pick objects that are, valuable for that reason. And ultimately, I just kept winnowing it down. It was hard. It was really hard. I think my editor would have liked me to have done maybe a couple more passes and got it down to maybe just 2 or 3 objects. But there's quite a lot of them in there. And Hitchcock's, the last reel of Hitchcock's first movie is lost, but they know if it's going to turn up, it's going to be either way in the Arctic or way in the south. So I put those together. So in the book too, I should explain how he finds them are all plausible. Those are all the theories that people have. So I didn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting.
That's fantastic.
Because every time you come across an object, there's always an entire association dedicated to finding it, and they have all these theories. So I just picked their best, plausible theories.
Okay. I don't know if you want to go into this or not, but I'm just wondering about hidden gems in your other books.
Well,
you want to just want to mention a couple.
Sure, I do like to. I used to you as an author, and you know this, Thomas, especially with your last novel, you layer in so many things, and there's so many connections in a novel and then you always have these moments as an author where you're thinking, am I just doing this for myself? Is anyone going to really put this together? Like how many of these layers and cross currents? And my brother in Montreal said, don't, it's like music. He's a composer. And so you layer, he said, people don't have to recognize all the notes. They're not recognizing, but they know something's happening. He said, think of it as making a curry. You put turmeric, you put little bit of this, you put some coconut, you put chili powder. People can't taste all those separate spices, but together makes a curry. So this is what I tell myself when the doubt comes that what I'm doing is not enough people will find out about it. I mentioned happiness where I put the page number. And I'll tell you a funny thing with that. There was a line in the book Happiness where he says something along the lines of, there's this big movement, this big purification movement across the world. And it said, even the Australians were on board, right? I just picked someone to make fun of. So I said, even the Australians. And I got a contact from the German translator saying, can I change that to German? I said, yes, by all means. So I contacted all the different translators. I said, why don't you change that to your country? So in the Italian version, it says, even the Italians were on board. And the Spanish version, so every language changed it. And I got a email from the Finnish translator. It was one of the funniest emails I ever got. He said, Mr. Ferguson, I'm translating your novel into Finnish. I'm afraid you've gone too far. A self-help book that destroys the world, I can believe, but nobody will believe Happy Finns. So I said, okay, fair enough. So the Finnish one doesn't have that. And with Spanish Fly, I wrote a book, a historical novel called Spanish Fly. And it's about a 19-year-old boy who goes on the road with a pair of con artists and kind of learns his way. And there's a point there where one of the characters, so Virgil's an older con man, he's sitting in a diner, he's very anti-intellectual, he's all about doing. And Jack is a very kind of introverted, thoughtful young man who's being turned into a con artist. And Jack's reading a book and Virgil has no patience for books. And he says, why do you read that? He goes, I can read the first 2 words of a book and tell you everything about it. And so Jack looks at him and says, in the. And Virgil goes, what are you talking about? In the. He goes, what? In the beginning. Let me hear you recite the Bible, in the beginning. And so Nigel gets all mad at him and says, okay, maybe not the first 2 words of the book, but certainly the first 2 words of every chapter. I could read that and I could tell the book. Now, I would say probably on books, like when you're doing book events and talking to readers, I would say probably only 10% of readers stopped and went, huh? And they went and read the first 2 words in Spanish Fly of every chapter. And there's a message. I won't give it away, but if you notice, there's a message
That is so cool.
from Jack to the reader, and it tells you what's going to happen. So the first 2 words, the hardest part was one chapter had to start with the words am now. Am now. It had to logically. Yeah. So I wrote a country and western song called Am Now a Lonesome Cowboy. Like I had to write it. So I think with 419, I had the index at the back. With Happiness, I had the page count that changed. But I think the Finder is the one I went all in with Hitchcock. And I'm trying to think if whenever I do giveaways on the book, I have a list of all the Hitchcock references and what page numbers they're on. So whenever people please me, I give it to them. And whenever they don't, I leave one name off the list. Were you able to get, how many were you able to get, do you think, roughly? I should explain, there's references to specific Hitchcock movies. There's about, I think, a dozen of them, 12 or 13 throughout the novel. They're specific. Some are obvious, some are not. What was the most unusual one that you think you got?
I don't know. I probably noticed, I'm thinking just over half. Because I wasn't reading looking for them. I was just kind of reading and going, oh my God, okay, no. I was actually reading it as a page turner. And I was stopping at moments of beauty. And I do want to talk about one of those, my favorite sections of this book. But oh my God, I honestly can't put my name on one that I remember right now offhand.
Well, it was a dirty trick, wasn't it? Because if I had done what you did and put the acknowledgements at the beginning, because people read the whole novel and then they find out that there's these references. The cruelest one, the one in there that's the cruelest is the Japanese detective keeps looking south by southeast, and of course north by northeast. Looking back at him from Australia, it would be north by northeast,
of course,
north by northwest, north by. So that's anyway. That is my
way
playing
too
with the
me. Okay, I'm just going to look at the chat board and see if we've got any questions. Who's Billy Moore? Let's find out the truth. I guess that's, would that be a question?
Yeah, I guess it's very specific to the readers, to
Yeah.
the book. So I'll just quickly touch. Billy Moore is the identity that the finder has taken over. So he kind of swallows people, takes their identity, and moves on. So Billy Moore is somebody who was discarded. He did exist, but the finder is not Billy Moore.
Okay.
The finder, that's not Billy Moore. The finder is from Belfast. He's from the Catholic side. He's from Falls Road. And Billy Moore, the man that the poor, unfortunate, I mean, not a good person. Billy Moore's not a good person. He's a very vile character, but the one who gets taken and destroyed is from the Protestant side of Belfast. So I never tell you who the finder is, spoiler alert, but he's not Billy Moore.
Okay, I gotcha. And they're saying here, oh, that wasn't a question. Okay, but it was kind of a good question. That was really good. My question is that I'd love to hear both of you answer, however. Okay, if there was a lost object from your life that represented you as a person, oh my God, what would that object be? Oi. I'm gonna defer to our guest and let him.
Well, I think it's funny how we always fall back to our childhoods, but I think for me, this is going to be very esoteric and it's probably not what you want to hear. But what I feel I lost is, as my kids have both, you mentioned in my intro that my kids are living in Calgary. They're actually not. They're both off. They're off. One's graduated from university. One's in university. I really have to update my website. I just realized when you read that, I better update my bio. But for me, it's the lost time. It's that you realize when your kids are young, you think that time is just going to flow like that forever. And then suddenly you're an empty nester. So I think it's all those various moments in art. I remember my son drew this beautiful glitter picture. He covered himself in glitter of a fish. I don't know what the hell happened to it, but I would love to find that, I think. How about you, Thomas? What would you, do you have something that you've lost, like a wedding ring or a first edition of a book, a first manuscript?
I wrote my first novel in fountain pen, and I lost that pen.
Oh, there you go.
And yeah, and you never lose the $700 pen or no. This one was I don't know. It was a $100 pen. It was a gift. It doesn't matter how much it was worth. But I do have a $29 Waterman pen that I can't lose if I try. But yeah, so I lost. I lost that pen, and that's I don't know. I mean that means a lot to me. But I agree with you about time. A friend pulled me aside when I think it was when I turned 40 and said, because I had a 1-year-old at 40, and he said, you got to pay attention, man, because time flies. And so I have been, but there's times when I go, did I pay enough attention? I mean, and I guess the first thing that came to mind when I read this question was a kid, my daughter, who watched me write these sorbets that I write every week for years, and I'm still writing them, although not as often these days. But so I would write this poem, and she was worried that I'd run out of ideas someday, and she made me a box a little paper box with a whole bunch of slips of ideas in it. And for me, that's one of my most cherished objects in the world. But it's not lost, right? So I know where it is. It's not. So lost.
I guess the flip side of that question is, what would haunt you if it was lost? And
yeah.
And I think one of the questions that popped up was, is the finder the devil? Is he actually the devil? And certainly
that's not a bad question, because I had that thought too. Yeah.
There is the scent of brimstone. There is a scent of brimstone around him. And so imagine, Thomas, that pen of yours. And this is what the finder does is, now imagine that you've cashed out you bought stock early on Apple. You cashed it out, and you have all these, and someone comes to you and says, you know that fountain pen? I can find it. What would you pay for that? If you would start writing, so this is what the finder does. He kind of comes to you. I don't want to give too much away, but the fact that he is flesh and blood, he almost dies. He barely survives, and the devil would shed his skin and go on. So, and there is that image, which actually the poet laureate she zeroed in on the image of a snake
Yeah.
shedding its skin, which is what the finder does. He sheds personalities, he sheds identities as he moves through. And I think there's even a snake skin early on in the book. So he's shedding snake skins, but he's certainly not the classic devil, because he can die in theory. Again, I don't want to give anything away. You have to be,
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that get found in this book that if we talk about them, and I would love to have a scotch with you someday and talk about them, and not when, you know, almost 50 people are listening. There's some things get found that are very moving and very touching. And one in particular is, it's like a magic act. It's like the best magic trick. It's about something that goes down a drain in a hotel. There's a little.
actually,
yeah,
can
so
I
you know
ask
what
you,
it is.
so author to author, I don't think I'm giving it away, is that Gaddy Rhodes, Interpol, everybody's lost physical objects, but they've also lost something. So as an author, I think I'll see how far I can take this without spoiling it, but Gaddy Rhodes has lost her wedding ring. So that's early on. She keeps twisting her finger. And the idea was that it's something, she's also had this marriage that she had young that kind of represented everything that she didn't become. So as an author, did you see it coming? Because it was hiding in plain sight, in a sense, from her office. Did you see what was coming or no? Could you sense it? Because authors are like other magicians. It's like a magician watching another magician perform a trick.
I didn't sense the end of the trick, but I sensed that there might be a trick there, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I did see that coming. I did say, okay, he's paying a lot of attention to it.
Yes.
Like, she's looking at it, she's in the car, the traffic's delayed because of it, the dust is in the air, there's something going on here. But yeah, no, you surprised me. And I love being surprised. I thought that was a fantastic trick. But yeah, so I knew something was going on, but yeah, that was very neat. Very cool. Very cool. So we're 42 minutes in. I want to talk about this bit of the book, and maybe you'll read something from this
Sure.
part of the book. Maybe you have something planned already. I want to talk a little bit about the Tao of Bryn, which this moment where Bryn, this little girl, shows the finder the city of Montreal through her eyes. I mean, holy crap! As a father, I remembered seeing the world again, brand new, through my daughter's eyes, and so that for sure came back really, really strong. But it also reminded me of the job that novelists and poets and painters and artists of every ilk that they do. That's their job, is to look at the world slightly differently through their own unique perspective and make the connection. Can you tell me how that came about?
I should say that so Tom, and you're right, it's a lesson that's given to, it's a story told to another character about the Tao of Bryn. And Rafferty's a travel writer who doesn't see the world fresh anymore. He's lost this part of him. Whereas the finder still sees the world as this magical place. The great irony is that Rafferty's this very gregarious, outgoing, kind of globe-trotting guy, but he's actually far, far more cynical than the villain. And the finder is kind of an anti-hero villain, but the finder does find the world as this great treasure hunt. So there's still wonder in his voice. Specifically, that is my niece, Bryn, in Montreal. And that actually is a moment, and Bryn is now graduated university.
So another
That's how long ago that was. And that is actually something that happened when I was in Montreal visiting the same brother who told me about the curry. So I was visiting my brother Sean in Montreal, and I had to drop off some laundry, you know, and Bryn was, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 like that, very little. And she came along, and then she said, "Do you want me to show you my neighborhood?" They live in this beautiful area of NDG. Like, they live in this really nice, interesting, funky area. But her tour was Bryn's tour. And later, when she tripped, that whole story. Did you want me to read that, or do you want me to tell that? Or I can just kind of tell what happened.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have the page. Let's say the page number. I don't know what page number that is.
It's 228.
228.
I'm sorry. I did this when I was reading your book. There's a lot of these sort of, you know,
Well, that's a good sign.
down corners. There's a ton of them. So
That's a good
yeah.
sign. No, you want a well-thumbed book.
Yeah.
I'll read from this. This is a section. So I'll give it a little background. Finder is kind of trapped, or he's cornered in a sense, in a farm in New Zealand. And there's a very lonely girl named Catherine, who's very isolated and very lonely on the sheep farm. And she's nursing him back to life, which is ironic. She doesn't realize she's basically nursing the devil back to life. Like she's trying to save the life of someone who really she should not be. But her and the finder kind of bond over time. And she tells him a very, very sad story about the bottles, throwing the bottles into the water, sending messages out, writing notes in her farm. She lives by the ocean, on a farm that's up by a cliff by the ocean. And so I'll just read this. It's about a page. And this is the story that the finder tells. He kind of speaks in parables and stories. I have a brother, he said, a brother in Montreal, a niece as well. Her name is Bryn, and once upon a time when she was very young, Bryn took me on a tour of her neighborhood. She must have been, I don't know, 5 or 6 at the time. The entire walking tour was from her eye level, and it was marvelous. We marched right past the statue of a general on a horse and a fountain with Latin inscribed in stone. She didn't notice. She didn't care. These didn't exist in the world of Bryn. Instead, she showed me the swing in the park where her dad pushed her, the shop on the corner where they put out water for pets, and how she had seen a dog messily lapping up water once, and how funny it was, and a restaurant where the owner was Greek and very loud and friendly, and how the jello there was very good, especially the green jello, and a fence where someone had put up a lost mitten this one time, and how it looked like it was saying hi every time she passed. It was the best tour I've ever had. The entire world is in your backyard, Catherine. The walk you make from your home to your school, I imagine you could write an entire book on the way the path turns, on the plants and the grass along the way, the manner in which the light plays across the hills, your neighbors with their woolly sheep. When I was tromping around that neighborhood in Montreal with Bryn, she said something that has stayed with me ever since. We were walking along her, chattering away, when she stumbled on an uneven bit of pavement. She stumbled and then suddenly she ran. She explained it to me later. When you trip, the best thing to do is to run through it. I call that the Tao of Bryn. And that's the passage. And even the green jello is something she said on the tour. The jello there is very good, especially the green jello. So that's my actual niece, Bryn Ferguson, and a walk she told me, and that lesson she gave me: when you start to fall, run right through it. It has come back to me throughout the years. And just recently, actually, in an unrelated matter, I remember saying, no, when you start to fall, just run through it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant metaphor. The sheep farm is so bizarre. Like I don't expect you to tell me where this came from, but oh my God, come on! Like sheep have personalities, just like people. LK 107, she's really curious, and BH 232 is kind of mean. Are you kidding me? And then the father who is obsessively trying to train the sheep to escape and never come back. Like it's at once. I mean, because it's buttressed up against this innocent girl, it's kind of terrifying that she has to deal with this. But it's also just hysterical.
Well, thank you,
Did
Alex.
you have a bad sheep experience at some point?
Well, no, it's I can tell you actually a story. I did work when I was young in my teens. I worked in Ontario in Haileybury at an agricultural station in a sheep facility. They were doing research on sheep, and I hated them because they would all just wedge. I would come in to feed them, and they would all wedge themselves into one corner. afraid, I guess. One of them would wedge, they'd all fall themselves, and I'd leave, and I'd come back 20 minutes later, they'd still be wedged in there. And I remember thinking, what this world needs is bolder sheep, you know? They were breeding sheep, and I said, well, why don't you guys breed bolder sheep? And he said, what would be the point? I said, just that way they wouldn't be sheep anymore. So in the novel, I used that experience. That would have been when I was 18 or 19. I was staying in Haileybury. It was actually in New Liskeard, the agricultural college. But the father, the lonely girl, her dad, his wife has passed away. We don't really explain the details, but obviously the father's become untethered. I imagine that the wife kept him kind of grounded, and he's obsessed with breeding sheep that will escape on their own. So he wants a sheep to escape. So every time he finds a sheep with a bit of personality, he breeds it with another sheep. He separates it. He's trying to create bolder sheep. And for a while, that was the working title of the novel, was Bolder Sheep, because the characters in the book are all kind of, I don't want to say maverick. That's such an overused word lately, but mavericks in the Aretha Van Herk sense rather than so the characters in the book are all kind of mavericks. So the working title of the Finder for a little while was called Bolder Sheep, which I still think is a good title, just not for this novel.
Yeah. I guess we're coming up to the end, and so I guess the last thing I'd like to talk to you about is endings. In the Finder, we start in Japan, and we come full circle, and we end in Japan. And then there's that horrific, beautiful footnote in Scotland. How compelled are you to tie up loose ends? Like, do they all have to be tied up, or?
They don't have to be. They have to be satisfying.
Okay.
Reader. They don't necessarily. You can leave loose ends. There's we don't know what happened to some of the characters after the events.
Of course. Yeah.
But I think I'm not obsessive about it. Like a lot of classic mysteries, every loose end has to be tied up. I do like a sense of a book that's a whole. I don't like a book that dangles unless there's a sense that it wraps up. But that said, I knew right from the beginning I would return to Japan. I would come back to that island. I kind of knew that, and I'm sure you know as well. You always you should have a sense of where your novel is going to end, so that you can lay down the foreshadowing and the setups and all that. You want to kind of know that might change. So, but the end in Scotland, that was added after the second draft had been edited, as I'd gone on that trip to Scotland, and I'd been to Lost, and I said, oh no, the Finder is here. I found this. I went to this. So the book ended in Japan originally, and then I did this press trip for Zoomer magazine to drinks, and I went to Lost, and it was raining, and I just finished Finder. So I'd finished the manuscript. It was done. As far as I was concerned, that novel was wrapped up and done. And I went to this, I was tromping around this old grave, and they said, well, there's a Viking grave in Luss. And they don't know why, because the Vikings, it's a Christian Viking grave in a Christian, and the Vikings never really got all the way to Luss. So I said, well, my God, what's underneath it? He says, oh, we don't know. We're not allowed to dig it up. And I thought, oh, the Finder would dig it up. So I walked around, I was in Finder mode, and I realized the bank of the river, because it's true, you couldn't dig it up. It's a huge stone. I thought, what if he came in from the side? There's got to be Viking coins in there. So I thought, you know what? I'm not done with the Finder. He's still out there haunting the world. So I came back from Scotland, and I wrote that last bit. And I don't know, but probably someone who looks at it carefully, it's probably written in a different style, because that last section was written probably 6 months after, or more, after the novel was done. I went back and I thought, no, the Finder's, I'm not done with him. And he's digging up a Viking grave in Scotland and still killing people. Yeah. He kills, I think, 8 or 9. There's a bloodbath. I think I was trying to add it up. I think it's 8 or 9 people that he kills. My editor complimented me that I didn't realize I killed them all a different way. One person's killed with a pen, one is poisoned, one is shoved off a cliff. Yeah. I thought, oh, he's creative. He's a creative killer. He kills everyone.
Shotgun to a face.
Shotgun to the face. So he's very creative. I didn't really intend that, but my editor complimented me that at least he's not predictably. He doesn't act predictably when he kills.
I'm going to go back and read the ending in Japan and the new ending, and just make some notes about what I find different in that style. See where you've gone in your writing, your writing tone. I guess that's it for us. There are a couple questions. was the reference to Marianas Trench really about the band?
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're talking to someone who is, I know this is a pop culture reference. One of my sons mentioned this. I didn't know the band Marianas Trench. When it comes to like pop culture, because one of my sons asked me that, but no, I did not know the band Marianas Trench existed. I know the actual Marianas Trench. I can't remember the reference. I think it's something like he lowered his standard. He's making some sarcastic comment. He said his standards are so low, it's like the Marianas Trench of standards, I think. But I know it's not a reference to the band. I know about the band now because of that. So no, unfortunately, I'm not as cool as that.
The other one here is, without giving anything away, was there significance to the lambskin gloves at the end?
The lambskin, well, yes, that he's, how do I give this away? So something happens with the sheep. It's just a little inside joke. It's like a little reference. So he has all these, it's hard not to give away, but somebody ends up with a lot of sheep at the end. So you're wondering, what does he do with them? Well, one of the things he does, he's wearing lambskin. It's just a little inside. Yeah, he's wearing.
No, we can't say if it was the bold sheep or not. We can't say.
Yes. But see, again, actually, that's a good question, because it's encouraging as a writer, because we talked earlier about how you layer all this stuff in, and you think that, and you realize nobody picks up everything. Of course not. I mean, I read a densely written layered novel. I've read your novels. I'm sure I missed as much as I picked up. But enough people pick up enough things that it's like a curry. And so I would hasten to say probably 1 in 1,000 people picked up the lambskin reference. So good on you. And it makes me feel, it encourages you when you're playing these games as an author, or you're layering things in and referencing stuff, that it does occasionally, people do occasionally catch the coconut in your curry, if you will.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Just a reminder that we can purchase The Finder and many of your other books at Audrey's and Glass Bookshop. And you can also find my books there too. Yes, you can. I can't take credit for it, but someone in our book club did and wanted to confirm. Oh, I don't know what that's about. Somebody said, hey, keep layering. Okay, we will. We'll definitely keep layering. Will, look at us. We're like 3 minutes under the hour. And I want to thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to sitting down and having a scotch with you in the near future.
Well, what we'll do is, you're in Edmonton. I'm in Calgary. I graduated from Lindsay Thurber in Red Deer. We'll meet halfway. We'll have a scotch in Red Deer. How's that? Halfway.
That sounds perfect.
That sounds like a plan.
Thank you so much. Okay. I think, Michelle, you have closing comments?
I will do some closing comments. Just to kind of confirm, the St. Albert Public Library Offbeat Book Club did The Finder as their book. So they are the ones who are on the chat. I mean, more than just them, but they're on the chat. It's part of, this is their book club day, specifically for your book. So some of those questions are from the Offbeat Book Club. Very nice. This went by too fast, and I so appreciate the mutual admiration, like, oh, Will Ferguson's switching this to, he's interviewing Thomas now. This is great. Thank you. Yes, you guys can meet in Red Deer, but really it would be awesome to have you actually here at Starfest when we're able to do it in person. You're at the very first one, and here we are 11 years later. It's just amazing. So and Thomas, now we've had you 3 times, so I think you're pretty much stuck with us. I do want to give a special thanks to Julia. She's sleeping right now, but for writing and performing her poem for us, especially from the other side of the ocean. Shout out to Michelle P for being my backup and keeping an eye on things behind the scenes. I want to thank our funders. Our main funder is the City of St. Albert, and we're also funded by the Friends of the St. Albert Public Library, Alberta Foundation for the Arts, Canada Council for the Arts, and thank you to our media sponsors, St. Albert Gazette, T8N Magazine, and Edify Magazine, and our partnership with the Arden. Some of you have been to a few Starfest events already, so you will have heard this, but at the end of the whole festival, you will be getting a feedback survey with a chance to win a set of the Starfest books, including the Finder. So we really want to know what you thought about these events. We want your ideas for who to invite next time. And there's only 2 events left for Starfest. Tomorrow night, I'll be hosting Susie Maloney and Eva Colmers for Monsters at the Movies, where they'll talk about bringing horror from the page to the screen, and we'll be screening their short film, The Suburbanite. So it's a good way to get in the mood for Halloween. And our final event is on Tuesday, November 2nd. Andrew Piper will be in conversation with Marty Chan. So those of you watching, you still get tickets for those at starfest.ca. Will and Thomas, if you want to watch those, just let me know. I'll send you the link. And this was wonderful. I'm going to say good night to everybody, and we need to do this again.
Next time, hopefully live, maybe in St. Albert.
Yes,
Then.
yes,
Yeah.
that would be wonderful.
Thank you,
All right.
Thomas. Thank you,
Thanks,
St. Albert Library. Thanks.
All right. Good
Thanks, Michelle.
night.